So in this segment, we're going to be talking about only in Brexit La La Land is Johnson leading the opposition to Putin, ex-Finnish Prime Minister says. And do you know what? I agree with the ex-Finnish Prime Minister Alexander Stubb. It's true for the most part. It is rubbish. And we'll talk about why in this video. But that is genuinely a phenomenal statement. You hear stories about Scandinavians being straightforward and having no chill, and this dude's the king of no chill by the looks of it. So a former Finnish Prime Minister has dismissed claims Boris Johnson is leading opposition to Vladimir Putin as illusion and utter rubbish. Alexander Stubb, whose country shares a 1,340-kilometre border with Russia, country Russia learnt not to mess with, said only in Brexit La La Land was the Prime Minister seen as having taken a lead globally. This idea about global Britain is as true as peaceful Russia, the Conservative ex-leader said. And, you can make the point that the UK has led in terms of giving weapons to the Ukrainians, which the UK is notorious for giving weapons to countries. Right, that's fine. But in terms of sanctioning Russians, we've been notoriously slow, which Liz Truss blamed on the House of Lords. But realistically, it's on the British government for not having the parameters in place. Dominic Raab talked about, the Magnitsky Act, which is in the UK done very little, especially compared to the version in America, which has done a lot more to, target Russian money. And, the UK is the laundromat for Russian money. Even the Americans are annoyed about it, with the Russians calling it apparently Londongrad, which is quite funny. But yeah, this idea about a global Britain is true as peaceful Russia, simply utter rubbish, to put it diplomatically. I mean, if that's what you guys call diplomatically, then fair enough. To claim that Boris Johnson has taken a lead globally, standing up to Putin, is an illusion only possible in Brexit La La Land. Because we have done some good things, but, to argue we are leading the kind of assault on Russia is not really true. His intervention comes as Johnson sparked fury by likening Ukraine's struggle against the Russian invasion to Brexit, which was a very stupid thing for Boris Johnson to do, especially when you had a summit of European leaders coming together in the near-distant future at the time. Donald Tusk, a former president of the European Council, dismissed Johnson's comments at the Tory Spring Conference as offensive to Ukrainians, the British people, and common sense itself. And the reason why Johnson made those comments is to kind of keep on board those Conservatives, that he's still that guy, the culture warrior. And, look, you can see here Johnson stands around awkwardly. No one wanted to talk to him. This is me at family events. And that's who he is now. People don't want to talk to him. They don't care. Javid, the health secretary, endorsed Mr. Johnson had taken a lead on television on Monday morning, saying when it comes to Boris Johnson and Ukraine, it's hard to find any world leader that's done more to support the Ukrainians at this time. I mean, that's not true. To support Ukraine at this time, I mean, I think arguably the Americans have done more in terms of weapons. I don't know if the UK does provide the best anti-tank weaponry, which I believe is the Javelin. But that's the American thing. Like, UK anti-tank weapons have done well. But in terms of supporting Ukraine as a whole, the refugee crisis, we have done very little in that regard. Supporting the army is important. Getting resources to them is very important. But also supporting the people who are, suffered due to the fallout of war. The UK has done very little in terms of actually sanctioning Russians. The oligarchs. We've done very little, to the point where one very famous Russian oligarch said he's managed to sell up or put, the house that he had in a trust, which has not been impacted by him. The sanctions have not impacted him because of that. So we've been very slow. The UK does not have the bandwidth of the EU. So when they talk about Brexit weakening both the UK and the EU, it's true, because the UK cannot, given the amount of funds, Russian funds in the UK cannot sanction as fast as the EU can. Yet it's more important for the UK to drop sanctions onto Russian oligarchs, because there's so many of them in the UK, if that makes sense. The UK has sent arms to Ukraine and sanctioned Russian individuals, which, again, we haven't done enough of. Abramovich was probably not too far off selling the club by the time we sanctioned him, or about 2 weeks. And, all of those liquid assets, they're all gone. And entities, but has been criticised for being slower to crack down on Kremlin-linked money than Europe. Also, a lot of lawyers in the City of London have been protecting Russian oligarchs for a long time now, and the UK has done very little to crack down on that. Britain is also the only major European country not to have a full open door policy for Ukrainians fleeing the conflict. We've talked about that previously, depending on how the video scheduling goes out, with Priti Patel saying that the Russians could be using infiltrate Ukrainian refugees and commit terror attacks in the UK. Like, that's the biggest load of nonsense I think I've ever heard. And we have so far taken fewer refugees than our neighbours. And people keep pointing to Poland and these other countries are neighbouring, which is true. But Ireland has taken more refugees than us, and Ireland is further away from Ukraine than we are. Johnson will visit Brussels on Thursday for a NATO summit, which has already happened, but he has not been invited to attend an EU leaders summit on the same day predominantly because of his Brexit comments. Joe Biden was invited to this, as the article mentions. His absence comes despite US President Joe Biden being expected to attend the meeting. And there are different things the NATO can do as compared to the EU. That's the key difference here. The NATO being more of a military alliance, the EU, having loads of fiscal power to damage the Russians, which they have tried to do. The Prime Minister gave up his automatic seat on the European Council when we left the EU. Johnson told the Tory Spring Conference in Blackpool over the weekend, "I know that it's the instinct of the people of this country, like the people of Ukraine, to choose freedom every time. I can give you a couple of famous recent examples." And this is when he compared Brexit to Ukraine, when he could have compared World War II if he really wanted to. I know these guys love World War II comparisons, but this would have been the ideal time to do it, and he chose not to. He chose a stupid example. He said, "When the British people voted for Brexit in such large numbers, I don't believe it was because they were remotely hostile to foreigners, when that absolutely was the case." I can't tell you the vast majority of Brexiteers are racist or hate foreigners, but there was a decent minority of them that did. You had the Breaking Point posters and all the other stuff. Nigel Farage famously saying he didn't want to live next to a certain type of European person next door, etc. And, send people home, all of this nonsense, cut immigration from Eastern Europe, all of this stuff. So, for him to argue this is simply untrue. He says, Boris Johnson says, it's because they wanted wanted to be free to do things differently and for this country to be able to run itself, when we always had that autonomy, really. And the idea that, you can compare the EU to the Russian invasion of Ukraine makes no sense. Russia are forcibly trying to take over Ukraine, whilst we joined the EU voluntarily and we left the EU voluntarily, where there was no force either way. But in the case of the Ukrainians, Russia is invading Ukraine with a military force, tanks, guns, planes, killing people. The EU never killed anyone in this country. So this whole point is a load of rubbish from Bojo the Wonder Clown. And, the Finnish Prime Minister, to an extent, is right that only in Brexit La La Land is Johnson leading the opposition. In terms of maybe we've donated more guns and things like that, but in terms of helping Ukraine, there are people who've done far more to help Ukraine. There are a lot of kids there, orphans, who don't have anyone, and yet Priti Patel have been dragging her heels on helping these kids out, which is just sad. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.